There's a very common question in every single Discord server, Reddit post, and Facebook group about which are the best free instruments that you can start using if you are starting to make music or do you want to expand your music library. Honestly, there's not one best, to be honest. Especially in the entry-level sort of market, there's nothing that's super special. But I do think there's a couple that could give you a lot of tools, a lot of instruments for you to make music and just worry about making the music. And then you can dive into more instruments and try to find your own template or your own instrumentation for your own project, and so on. But I will keep on making videos, and I will also make videos on each of these instruments one by one. A much more deeper videos of these instruments one by one. Straight from Mexico City, my name is Juanchis, and I did several examples, but let's start with this one. I want to start with this Synth sampler. All of the links of the instruments will be down below in the description of the video, but this Synth sampler is just a sampler. Remember that a sampler is a unit of technology that many years ago people used to record some audio on it, and then they could play it back in any other notes that they wanted or at any other speed. The mellotron is part of this history. Of course, the CMI is part of this history. And the idea being that when they used to record it back to tape, it would roll the tape and it would detune it so you could have all of your keys available. The idea of the Synth sampler is that it's a Synth sounding sampler. And you just download the version that you need for your own operating system. You just look for the price low to high and then search for the free libraries. There are enough of them. I downloaded a few so I could make this example right here. And once you have them downloaded, you have to also make an account on the website as usual. Once you have that, you open the plugin, you log in into your account. You can keep on scrolling through the library, whatever instruments that you might want, and you assign where you're installing all of your libraries. Personally, I use an external hard drive, an external solid-state drive, to have all of my libraries, since I have like 600 gigs of libraries. So I need a 1 terabyte external SSD just for that. And here you just click and open the one that you want to use, as simple as just double-clicking it. And now it's on. If you're working on Reaper, and you don't have a MIDI keyboard, because this is something that people have asked enough, I have assigned to a shortcut my Show Virtual MIDI keyboard, and that opens this floating keyboard. You have to assign the Send All Keyboard Input to Virtual Keyboard. Whenever you check this box, most of your shortcuts on your keyboard won't work. So now you have to click Stop or disable it, use your shortcuts, and check it only when you're going to play. Be sure to have your input assigned to MIDI, and in the case that you have all MIDI inputs, you will see right here which letters are being used for the notes, and you can shift octaves by using left and right on your arrow keys on the keyboard. If for any reason that's bugging out and it's not answering to your keyboard, you can go into Input MIDI and assign it to Virtual MIDI Keyboard, so it's actually working here. It's as easy as that. Remember, the part of the idea of sometimes having a virtual instrument, it depends on the genre that you're doing, but you don't always expect to be at something really precise. If you're trying to edit and modify a lot the sound itself, you can start building a chain on your FX chain that modifies the instrument, including something that simulates some sort of a preamp with some sort of a channel strip too, if that makes any sense. Add any sort of effects, but everything that has to do with how you're playing the instrument as if you are composing. That includes a delay, that includes a reverb, because sometimes you want to play against a delay, and that will give you a specific melody. And that is different than adding a delay after you have a melody, because you're not playing against the delay or with the delay. So in the case of this sampler, I have this instrument right here. And I really like this reel-to-reel piano. It has like this tapey sound to it. Even though you have free plugins like the Show Tape plugin that could give you that extra tape sound and you can modify a lot more, it could be a great idea to just have a decent sound to begin with and then keep on modifying it as necessary. On this other track, I'm taking advantage of Paranormal FX Router. If you haven't tried it on Reaper, I have also like a couple of videos where I show how does it work. But you can have a lot of parallel chains where I have 3 different versions of instruments. And for example, I tried this decent sampler with a reel-to-reel piano. And this was meant to do only the harmony, right? You also have solo features built into this. So I can have the 3 of them on, and I can solo one of the chains. And then I can check this one. And I set up the Casio one, but it's different enough so the harmony has its own place and the melody has another place. And I added a parallel chain that's in the same track. We usually could use auxiliary tracks for this, for building the FX, where I'm only adding a delay. I know I'm using a pay delay in this, but I like how it sounds. Like, just use your stock delay, it's fine. And if you're listening to some extra movement, is this re-EQ at the end. And now I have a balance of my delay, and now I have a balance of my clean sound. And here I'm using a re-EQ, and I saw that Kenny recently uploaded a video on this. I have talked about this many times on my videos, but just to remind you that you can modulate any parameter of any plugin by moving the last parameter that you want to modulate, and then you go into the parameter window. You can add from this new window modulation from audio control, so it's some sort of an envelope shaper with all of the timing and parameter ranges and LFO. Or you can link it to another track or another parameter of another effects in the same channel or elsewhere. And this gives you a ton of freedom to make stuff move around and adding layers of movement. So my envelope one, my frequency cutoff is moving because it's following the sound. And since I can see how much is it going into the curve of the mod, I can change a little bit that curve and make it go up higher or slower. And just have fun with it. But I do think that this layering of the melody with the harmony works super well. It's complementary, and that's part of the mindset that I'm most of the times using, trying to figure out how am I going to match my own instruments. And yes, free plugins can also make it. You have to use your ears, or you can also get some extra support by using some metering. I also have a video on that, so I'll link it in the description. In this case, I did several takes of how I wanted to do the harmony. As usual, a couple of tips on how to work around in Reaper. Sometimes you don't want to see all of the takes, so I have this show takes when room available action set up on my toolbar, and now I only have to look at that one. And remember that you can scroll between takes by using T and Shift T to move backwards. In the case of the 808, I'm using a free synth, and I have three videos on this one and how to use it. Like, do take advantage of this synth. It's awesome. Like, you have no idea how good it sounds. This is an 808 patch that I did, and it works super good. It's a free plugin. I have no extra processing going on. My FX chain, it's only the plugin itself. I'm using only one filter, like I'm not overdoing it. Like that's one of the things that will probably get you to get your sounds sound smaller if you're only processing and processing and processing them just because you can. So try to do only what's necessary and what's beneficial for the sound. Sometimes the instruments themselves as they come are good enough. This is a free synth. I have showcased it many times in my channel. You have 3 oscillators. You can use it as an audio. It has an audio input. It has 2 layers, so you can do some split instruments that do some really complex patches of evolving sounds or sequential ambient or pop music. Like, it's super powerful. I have tried it to compare it with Serum so many times. I have Serum too. There are some things that you can't do here that you can do on Serum and vice versa. They are different instruments. They both sound super good. But for example, here the routing of the filter and a couple of other things do make it very unique. In the case of Serum, you can mod the wavetable positions. You can mod some other stuff that here aren't as easy to access. And again, in this first example, I'm showing 2 plugins with different libraries and a patch that I made, and I'm trying to use free stuff, for example, the Toucan collection with the tape saturation effects and the RC inflator, and this thing is beautiful. Like, you have to check it out. If you don't have it on your FX library, just go check out your extensions and browse packages, and it could be there, like, if it's not stuck. And again, even though this is free, it sounds really decent to my ears. And of course, the search plugin, you can just go into the website, download it. It's super easy. There's a huge community just uploading patches, and go in the internet, look for the patches of the styles that you're making, and or watch the videos that I've done so you can learn how to mangle around those patches or make your own. Moving on, the third plugin that I might suggest you to have, Labs by Spitfire. This plugin, that's such an intense video to have on repeat. It's so fast. Like, don't do that. Okay. So there are a ton of libraries and a lot of packs that you can download from the website, even though they also have some paid libraries. There are a ton of free instruments. Like, you can just preview them on the installer itself and download whichever you like the most. But again, they sound super good. And I did this with the Labs library. Okay, that's intense harmonically. I know. Like, don't worry about it. So here I'm only fitting one single MIDI item. Yes, insert new MIDI item. MIDI item. I have a MIDI item up here that's being sent into these other 3 tracks by disabling the audio and using the MIDI all, like sending all of it. The benefit of having this sort of routing is that you could also take advantage of composing some sort of extra melody up here. And let's suppose that you have these extra notes. I'm not sure if they are working inside of the scale or not. I really don't care right now. But you could change the event properties and send them through a different channel, for example, channel 3. Or you can add some sort of shortcut here on your toolbar so you can create a new melody and send it only through channel 3. And you can see everything in one single screen. I know you can have different MIDI items and show them at once, but you could do something like this. And then in your sends, you could only send, for example, MIDI channel 3 to one instrument. And that would work. So you could have everything in one single MIDI item. So the idea here is that I have this first layer. This plugin, I probably don't need to make a huge video on it, so I can show you most of the uses right now. You can link this to any of your MIDI controllers that you have, to your knobs or your faders, by right-clicking and learning MIDI CC automation. I suggest that you might want to use the faders of your keyboard. I use that for expression purposes. And if you left-click on this part of the plugin, you can usually modify the ADSR, attack, decay, sustain, release, and modify a little bit of the effects till you find the sound that you're looking for, or you modify it as you want it. You will have all of your libraries up here on the left, and every time you open it, there's something that's like, I don't know why does it open always at the top instead of opening straight on the tape orchestra, but if you just click right on the name, it will bring you all the way there, and you can check all of the presets that you have for that specific instrument and just keep on switching until you find something that you like. Don't sleep on modifying the CC and adding some automation on your instruments. This helps a lot. On the second layer of my labs instruments, I have this glockenspiel trio, part of the Bell Swarm library. And even though I could add the reverb so I could make the sound longer, I much rather do some sort of small attacks like most instruments of this kind would do. And something that I don't do as much in Reaper because I think it's a little bit slow yet. The MIDI effects aren't as good, so you have to fiddle with them a lot, try and figure out what you're doing. So I'm using the MIDI chord deriser, so I have 1 octave up and 1/5 above the notes that I'm receiving here. And without it, you can scale velocities and do other stuff. And then I'm using the velocity variation preset that I did. Can copy this just as it is. And I'm trying to do some velocity variations. If you don't want it to keep so much, you might want to take this a lot less, probably around 8%, something like that. Here I want that extra variation, this jumpiness, with it on. That way, even though it's receiving exactly the same velocity all of the times from this MIDI clip, I'm always varying a little bit the intensity of how hard is it being hit. I'm also adding a little bit of accent to it. And then I'm automating a little bit of this arpeggiator MIDI effect. Sadly, this isn't super powerful since you have very few options here. You might want to use some sort of sequencer and try to set it to scale and try to figure out ways to find intriguing ideas. But I want to show you that down here, what I'm automating is the on and off of the MIDI arpeggiator. It's right here. You might also want to automate the rate of it so you have like extra fills on some stuff and try to make some complex chains of MIDI effects. That works great. I love doing that. And I had a chance to review it again on Sunday, where I took another lesson because you can never stop studying. And then I have this other instrument. And that sounds super cool. I have this a cello moods pack, and I'm using the G minor melancholy preset. Again, I modified it. I modified a couple of stuff here and there, and I'm doing strategy that many film composers sometimes use, where you just highly compress low velocity instruments and you bring them up, and that's going to also bring a little bit of noise and a little bit of feeling of tension to it because it's super soft, but it's blown out and super dense. That's why I have 1175 compressor in my FX chain, and I'm heavily compressing this. And the whole idea here is that, again, I'm saving myself some extra space of having audio tracks or having tracks in Reaper, and I'm just building the chain where I have this reverb built in here with chorus and with a free chorus and the freestyle reverb plugin. Again, just mix to taste using this volume knob. And that's one of the things that I like of doing this heavy compression, because once the attack ends or once the sound ends, it's going to start recovering and bouncing back from the very, very low parts of, or very, very silent parts of your track. And that's part of something like coming out of it. Remember that some suggestions for arranging strings could be like doubling making octaves and just distributing them among your strings. Probably trying to leave some parts of the chords to some instruments and some others to violins or cellos, and like just distribute your chords. Here I did the tape piano with the magnetic reader sound. And I like this broken sound for this. I think that complements really well with this cello. You might want to add maybe some reverb, extra verb, or extra delay to this one so it lasts a little bit longer. But since specifically here I'm using it to jump into the next chord, probably I would automate a little bit less of the effect right here and then go back into it. And last example of the Labs library, I have the vintage drums. Like that sounds super good. Like you can make some awesome stuff. I took out the MIDI clip from the library of XO. I know this is a paid plugin, but you probably have some MIDI clips where you have some grooves already set. And now if we listen back to it all together, see how it comes back from never-ending land? Okay, let's move to the next plugin. And I don't know why my push was making Reaper crash, because I did those examples with my push, and so I did the third one on Ableton Live. Okay, so I did this one. Yes, I love that reverby, reversey sound in most of the things that I do. And for this, I combined the Sineplayer by Orchestral Tools and the Soundpaint libraries. Again, they have paid libraries and they have free libraries. You get the idea. There are a ton of free instruments that you can try from them, like some guitars, plucky stuff. The ambiences libraries, I really like them. The piano sounds super cool, like just have fun with it. But again, what I'm trying to say here is that probably this is like the user interface that's a little bit stranger. Because even though I consider myself someone really tech savvy, I always have like a really hard, I always have a couple of problems trying to navigate again the interface if I haven't used it recently. So on the left, you have all of your libraries. You can work with programs. That's like a whole patch loaded into it. So if I load a library, oh yeah, and do yourself a favor and change it to night mode. Okay. If I'm loading a program, what will happen is that I will load several patches with effects built into it with racks. And this plugin also sounds super good. But if you're trying to build your own sound, what you might want to do is go into the parts section and drag maybe some violins here and some guitar plugs here, and you can morph between sounds. The thing is that this is really, really naked at the beginning, so you have to start adding effects. and start finding your own sounds or building your own sounds. There's one parameter that I love in this specific instrument. I'll turn this second part off and I'll open the specific menu of this first part. And each of the samplers built into this library or this plugin can have their own key ranges, their own velocity ranges, just like we would have on Ableton Live our instrument racks. You have your own pannings. You have a lot of parameters that you can adjust per program, and that lets you do a lot of things. One thing that I really love about this is that you can make the sample go in reverse. Not every single part has this available. So for example, this guitar pluck, it's building into it. And if I play it without the reverse as a default, or in one note stretch, it's going to have that synthetic sound to it, or the one notes. For drum programming is obviously the best choice, so you can have a 3-part drum here, and you can key range it and just hit this button and hit 2 keys on your keyboard, and it will set the range using your MIDI keyboard, etc, etc, etc. Or you can have like 4 different hats and use the velocity to reach every single one of them. Like, you can do a ton of stuff here. So the sounds where I'm using this is, for example, let me turn off all of the effects of this part of the bass. I'm using this as the high part, or the high, like the upper half of my bass line, with some filter variations, because you can add modulation to all of it. You can right click, add LFO modulations. Like, there's a ton of things that you can do here. I'm using 3 different parts that I dragged into it and I modified a bit. I panned one to the left, one to the right, one in the middle. And once I processed it, I ended up with this. And that's fine, that's what I like. On the low part of it, I'm using an organ. And again, like, the source sound is super good. Just modify it and do the effects processing that you want, that you like. But the sound already sounds super cool. So for example, here I'm taking advantage of part of what makes Ableton Live, but again, you could do this instrument rack sort of thing, where one bar goes on one patch of Soundpaint, and then on the other bar, it switches and fades into the other one. And that gives me this result. You could automate the morphing and morph from one sound to another. Like, that's another way of doing it. Simply, I did it here like this just because that's the way I liked it. But my second patch is taking advantage of the reverse plucked sound of the piano. And the other one is like an open grand piano, and they both sound like really good. And they are this extra layer of just a little bit of something. And for my harmony, I'm going to use the last plugin that I show in this video, and that's the Sineplayer by Orchestral Tools. It's the same thing, I already showed it. I don't have too many libraries from them right now. Sometimes I uninstall stuff and they come back. These don't have a lot of tweakings like the library, like the Spitfire Labs libraries. But one of the things that I think you should really take advantage of is these loaded articulations. So you can MIDI trigger, so you can send an event or a MIDI note from the MIDI clip into the plugin, and that's going to change the sound is being played. There's an electric bass sound, this one, the Crux, that has the jazz bass, the precision bass, and you can do the muted articulations, you can do the pluck, you can do the finger, and you can switch between those articulations and program some really interesting bass lines just using the key switches. I will make a video on key switches. I think that's something that's really resourceful when you're trying to make music and giving that extra layer of something happening and not just some MIDI programming going on. So here, I'm using first this layer of only the full drawbars. If I change the articulation, Like, you have so many things to modify. Instead of having to move all of the switches, all of the levers or the faders on the actual organ, you can just key switch them and start making fast changes with your left and right hand or MIDI programming. The mixer is here available because you can have different instruments loaded in, and the loaded articulations up here will merge into the mixer. But again, this will have probably another video as well. You can always modify a couple of stuff here and there. And you have, of course, many options available if you want to do some extra stuff. So this layer is being added to this fast percussive vibrato. And they both have the same MIDI. So what I'm doing here, and it's something that you can also do in Reaper, is that in Reaper you could do it as some audio envelope shaping that can modify the level or the volume of parts of a container. But on Ableton Live, what I'm doing is I'm using the shaper MIDI, map and modify the gain or the level or the sound that comes out of the plugin. And whenever a MIDI event goes into this chain, it's going to increase the parameter all the way up to gain 0 and then decrease across time. How long is this lasting? It's going to last half a bar. So this is probably quarter note. So across a quarter note is going to lose pretty much all of its volume, and then it's going to die completely by half a bar. And I'm only taking really close attention to this because I don't want it to go above 50%, because 50% is 0 dB here, and if I go above it, it goes all the way to plus 35 dBs. So this shaper MIDI is modifying this utility, and then I'm just going into an echo device. But since this is multi-map available, I could also do some sort of self-docking parameter. I love these kind of tricks. So whenever the node starts, I want to have the max at the initial parameter. That's going to be the lowest value of my envelope. And whenever it hits, I'm going to make it dock by probably, I don't know, that much. And you can do your own stock docking, and it works great. I know Echo has a built-in dock, an actual docking. And it has a specific time parameter. Here I'm just using the MIDI event, taking advantage of the decay time within a grid, not trying to figure out if this release time is more or less within the grid. And the threshold, or how much does it pull down, I'm just managing it with the percentage of the docking. Okay, so those are some free instruments that you can use and start using to make music today. I don't suggest you download 50 libraries at the same time. Find some instruments that you feel are interesting or are enticing to you. Make 5 or 6 small loops, try to figure out what you can do with them. And if that's not being enough, then you can start downloading more libraries. Because even though storage is not an issue in 2025, for some people it still is. And most importantly, if you have way too many instruments, you probably won't develop a language with every single one of them. So stick to few of them, try to develop them, try to find your own way of processing your instruments. I also have a series of videos of things that you can do to pianos, to drums, and other instruments. I'll link them in the description. And if you like these kind of videos, I really appreciate your support with the Buy Me Coffee link down below, or hit the notification bell, subscribe, leave a like, leave any questions in the comment section. And straight from Mexico City, my name is Juanchis, and thanks for listening.